Let's just make sure that it's in there. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. All right, let's see who's coming in on the live stream.
Oh, crap, we're live.
Oh, you're logged in there, Dylan?
Oh, yeah. I was like, oh, crap, we're live. Yeah, I wasn't picking my nose.
Yes. Amazing. Okay. Thank you to everyone who's logging in on Facebook Live. It's such a journey that we've been on today and yesterday. And of course, I feel like, just as we keep going, there's so much magic that's being revealed in the conversations that we're having. We just had a magnificent panel, which Paul was also participating in, and now we have the pleasure of being with Paul's presence on his own. And there's just so much that I want to commend you for and ask you. And first, what I would like to do is just present the story of how we met, which was magical in itself.
Yes, we do. Yes, that's so awesome. I love it. Are you going to share, or am I going to?
Ooh, we can tag team on it for sure.
Okay. Yeah. I love how we met. That's very cool. Literally, the universe aligned us.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was there to interview and be a part of. It was the UN. Was it
International Day of Women?
Yes, that's right. International Day of Women. And I had connected with one of the chairs of the yoga committee for the United Nations. So her name is Denise. So Denise and I had this brilliant conversation together, and we ended up going on a journey of journalism. We spoke to two of the Siddha masters that were a part of the day that was at the UN. One of them was Yogmata Aikawa, and the other one was Pilot Baba. So among these just reverent people in the world, it made sense to me that I met Paul. To be able to be there in the magnificence of that day and to just realize what brought us all together, it is really, it's mind-blowing to think about it right now.
Yeah, that actually really is. I sort of, until you sort of focus in on it, you sort of forget, but that was an amazing day.
Yeah, it really
What I have to tell you about that day too, which I just want to sort of amplify on, as a male, whenever I go to sing wherever I am in the world, one of my favorite things, because the list, I mean, not to say, I say this with humility, obviously, but the list is long of the things I've done now. But the one that always makes me feel a little extra special is that day, which is sort of interesting. And the reason why I say that is because women have been such a huge part of my life. And strong women and strong men together support each other. And that one, whenever anybody reads that one, that United Day for Women, was such a powerful day, because there is nothing greater with a badge for women that we can work together as divine males and divine females. And that is a beautiful thing. So I love that you just shared that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we had the chance to talk briefly, and I said, Paul, I would love to spend some time with you.
Yeah.
And what I've learned from you, if I could just continue to share, is that the quality of your presence, that you have with the people who contribute to your life, and from what I've seen, your husband, and also the people that interact with you on social media, is so deep. So deep.
It's so deep.
Nothing like I've ever seen.
Yeah. It's my spiritual practice, actually, and I think this is the thing that I will share with you, in the spiritual movement of such, and I will make no apology for saying the truth ever. I've met a lot of people that I really respected spiritually, and then when I saw how they treated people, not cool. And I think the thing that people fail to realize is that the way you treat people is a direct reflection of God.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have that, you're missing a really key ingredient to Ascension, actually. So I think that your value in the way you treat people actually increases your vibration with God. So that's the why.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's an emotional one for me, just because. Thank you. It's been 9 years, and it's been a long time taking the time to do that too. I remember, I just want to say this because the teaching of Maya Angelou is the why. So, first of all, I want to thank you for this. And the teaching of Maya, I just have to like take a deep breath and just take the new energy in for that. But Maya Angelou always said that, you know, doing what's right might not always be profitable. It might not always sort of make you the most favorite person in the room, but do right, because that's the kind of thing that will protect you in a way that bodyguards cannot. And this is the thing that, you know, I live by that too, because I think that's why you treat people well, because that is the protection that really protects you. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, shifting into what I really wanted to talk today about, and I have to share with you sort of this, you know, this space right now that we're in with this huge pandemic. So whenever I do a really big moment, I always go to God. And I just went to God today and I said, you know, what do you really want me to do today? And it's really interesting because this is not something that I expected today. So God's answer to me was that we need to speak about the truth. And the other thing that God really wanted me to share about was our ancestors. So this Ascension talk is going to be sort of about ancestors coupled with sort of some sacred geometry that was shown to me today. So I have a science background. I did not expect this to show up today in my meditation at all, but it did. And it was really quite cool. So God showed me today a very specific thing to focus on in meditation. It's an X and or a Y, or an X and a Y. Okay, so, and the Y is not like, so not a Y where it's like not symmetrical, the Y like this.
Yeah.
Or the X like this, okay?
Yeah.
So this is really interesting. So if you are interested in this space and going into yourself, they showed me, so I have a great big team on the other side, okay? So they showed me this X and this Y. But what was really interesting is I went through every single person that had to be in my bloodline for me to be here today. And I would actually ask everybody to hold that X and the Y. And if you don't know science, the way that it works really simply is that there's basically an X, which is from always a female, and a Y or an X from a male. When you have an X and X, it's a female. And when you have an XY, it's a male. So the thing that's really cool is that we are divine masculine and feminine, but these X and Y meditations into yourself, into your bloodline, and to clean your DNA from every ancestral line was what was shown to me today in your meditation. So that was the answer that God wanted me to share. And actually, if you really think about our body, we actually are a big X, and our core is in the center. And that's sort of where that Y point is anyways. So we sort of are an X and a Y. So that said, I really wanted to just say that for those that are maybe tapping into this that might be divinely aligned by that. So that was the first thing. So I've done my job by sharing it.
Well, also may I add
yes,
that
please do.
that happens to be something that is very dear to myself and
Okay.
Del. When I there was a point in our relationship where I said, I know that we're supposed to be together. And the reason why was because it came across to me in sacred geometry. I said, Del, it's very clear, you know, that our existence has meaning. And, you know, this is what it showed me. And it showed me, I'm going to draw a piece of paper. Hopefully I can recreate it. Right? When that happens, like, is that, you know, Del, or Delta,
right.
is actually that shape.
Right.
And Chi is an X.
Right.
In, you know, in the Greek numerals. So
Right.
I said, when you put those two together, what you get is actually the space that flows in between them.
Right.
And it's shaped like an infinity.
Yeah, that's really powerful then. Yeah. See, it's funny. When this happened today too, I was like, what? Like, I did not expect that. So I'm glad and this is the sort of thing sometimes in this way when you're showing something, I just trust it now because
Yeah.
I know that it also holds a space open for a new codex and a lexicon to exist.
Absolutely.
So that said, I love it. So we're connected.
Absolutely.
Perfect. That's wonderful. I love it. So okay, so basically what I really wanted to focus on is sort of share a little bit about me. So and then sort of move into the ascension aspect of things. So long story short, I know I've been prepared to be this person, as we've all been prepared to be who we are, right? And wherever you sort of awaken, you awaken, and whatever way you awaken, you awaken. And we're in the times where many people are awakening and many people are actually awake. It was interesting in that panel because I thought it was fascinating how people just define their belief systems so specifically without really sort of letting go of that limiting belief. For me, I say I come from God. It leaves no room for anything else. So I work in that sort of space, and I came to planet Earth. I don't feel like I'm from here. I came here to serve God. It's really that simple. And I say it with power now because I once wasn't able to, but I understand that now. And I always have known that, I just was scared to say it. So that said, I'm an ascension guide. So I help people ascend, which means really simply, I want to just share what that is. I help people remember basically that they're their highest self. And I help people basically by holding that space open in a way that makes them feel worthy. And I'm not perfect at it, so I make no claim to be perfect. I'm a human being. I make mistakes like everybody else. But that said, I also try in my spiritual practice every single moment to get better at holding space for basically divine to flow. And so that means that basically I think through music, and this is the thing that I don't think people understand about music. It is a vibration and a frequency. And for me, I didn't expect it to sort of be this way when I was studying music back in my old life. But my life is divided in sort of two parts. And one is basically the old me, the part that I had to live to understand what was going on enough so that I could write about my life. And in 2011, my father hung himself by suicide. And that was the moment where God came in and basically, quite frankly, saved me from my old self and showed me the way through my grief back to who I am as my highest self. So it's been a journey going basically back home, if you will, to God. And so I think that, everybody has their own story. That's been my experience. And everyone has a different version of this story. There's no right or wrong in it. There's no duality. It is what it is. So that said, this has been my story. But I'm also here to help people as an ascension guide because I think that people lose sight of actually the divine very quickly because they try to explain it with languaging that just doesn't express it the way that it needs to be expressed. So singing is a frequency that is an emotional intelligence. So it comes from the emotional intelligence of support, which is what God is always doing for us, always supporting us. So my music, and this is the thing that's sort of funny, is that I didn't really sort of realize what was going on because God asked me to sing probably about 3 months after my dad died. And I hadn't sung for like 10 years, hadn't played the piano, hadn't done anything. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, what? Like, no. And I basically denied it for probably about the first album I did as a joke, really. But I brought a picture of Jesus into the studio, which is funny. But I say this because I did not see things going this way, but I couldn't stop it, is sort of the point. So I did this first sort of album, and I finally just got to the point where I just had so much music flooding in through me that I couldn't stop it. So I would sit at the piano and just write. But my music is a codex and a lexicon of emotional intelligence for ascension. And people don't understand maybe the complexity of that, but if you're going through a hard time and you want to awaken, my music will guide you from basically a pain body into an ascension. And it goes in 7 albums in sequence the way that they were released as I was ascending. So this codex and lexicon will remind the listener of the listener's divine worth with God. And that's really the design of it. So it's sort of like a process. So I just wanted to sort of say that about my music. And then what I wanted to do is just share sort of about Ascension today. And the biggest thing with Ascension, and I made some notes just so I have some clarity, but the biggest thing about connecting to Source and integrating our highest self during the Great Awakening, which is whenever that is, it doesn't necessarily mean that you haven't gone through that already too, or are going through that. But I think ultimately, I think we as human beings make this really complicated, and God is genius. And genius is so simple. God is in the silence, like you said in the last call. That's where you'll find God. You won't find God in the physical the way that people have thought God works. God is an alchemist. So as an alchemist, that means energetic and vibration frequency. And so I'm going to share the part of my ascension that really changed me is I used to suffer from anxiety like crazy. And God has shown me and spoken with me every step since my dad died about what to do. And one of the big shifts in my life was when God showed me to go into my heart with my free will and take my hand with my will and turn up my frequency. Not complicated, super easy. With your will, go in and turn up your frequency to pure divine love. When you do this, something happens, and you have to really mean it from your gut with all of your power, and you flex your gut and turn up your vibration in your heart. It will change your life. That was the first thing that changed my life immediately. And so that said, it doesn't cost a dime to do that. Free. And God works like that, because that's your right as a human being and as a soul. So that's the first message that I just wanted to share about that. And again, what is Ascension? And Ascension is basically being your highest self in manifest. And that means your highest frequency that you can achieve with love. Pure, essential, eternal, whole, round love. And this is the thing that I think I was raised Catholic, and I thank the Catholics for teaching me the structure of spiritual practice. But the thing that the Catholic Church did not do, and I say this for Christianity in general, is that there's no mediator between you and God. A priest is a wonderful thing. I love the spiritual council. I'm all for that. But one thing that spiritual practice in that way did not do is it did not make my relationship with God sovereign in and of itself. And that's the one thing that I just sort of needed to clean up for me to sort of ascend. Because I think a priest's job has been sort of lost in translation over all these years, that it's to basically strongly connect yourself, the person, the soul, with God as a private relationship. And it's very private. But I speak about it openly because I think we need to clean this mess up. So that's part of Ascension, your relationship with Source, direct, no mediator. That's a big part of Ascension. And then the other thing that I wanted to sort of talk about is the fifth dimension right now. So in these spiritual sort of discussions, and I've met many people, as you have, talking about the fifth dimension, and we've talked about this a little bit, but God showed me very specifically that the fifth dimension is the heart. And Jesus, we know this. I think that we tiptoe around this way too much. It's really simple. You make a promise to become responsible for the energy you create. We're creators. And you make a promise to yourself. And I think that when you make that promise to yourself, it doesn't mean you can't be, you can't mess up or you can't make mistakes. That's not what this is. But when you make a promise to be responsible for the energy you create, something happens in your life. And if you start practicing this way, what happens is when you become love, expanding love, you're basically going to create a piece of heaven on earth. It's this simple. It's not complicated. But many people that are human beings have childhood traumas or wounds, which is really part of being human. But when we work with that shadow and clean it up with God, quite frankly, something happens where we get to basically start creating a piece of heaven on earth physically with other people, and that's co-creation. So the thing that I wanted to sort of go into, which is what God showed me to do in my ascension, is to go back to the first two cells that made me me. One for my mother, one for my father. And what happened is, I didn't expect this to happen this way, but I went back to those first two cells in meditation, and God showed me sort of a life review, so to speak, and went through every single moment of my life with me. Took a couple of months probably to do this process, but just little bit by little bit. And what would happen is there would be some pain, and God would just light it up, and you could let it go. And just let it go, let it go, let it go. And whenever you go back and find a pain sort of moment, just realize that it was there for you to show you something that you needed to learn, and to let it go, and just to flood that with divine love. So bring in the divine love from God and just light that space up. But what God also showed me, which I did not expect, is that there were diamond light moments. And diamond light moments are those little seeds when you're a kid, those things that make you really, really happy. The things that make you feel absolute bliss, joy beyond joy. And those diamond light moments are seeds. So God asked me to take those seeds and plant them in my heart. And those seeds, and you get rid of all of the pain body, but those little diamond light seeds, when you actually put them in your heart, your only job is to make sure that you nourish them with God every single day. And if you do that, it takes a lot of time. God is very patient, but it takes a lot of time. And with time and effort and devotion, you will start to have a purpose that will be nothing like you could imagine. And I say this because I didn't know how this would look, and I thought it would be very different, but I've been doing this. And I've been doing it for 9 years now. And the data that I have for 9 years of creating relationships with people all around the world in service to those seeds, for me it was music. I've always wanted to be a priest, but God's answer to me was not like that, like this. So all of those seeds that I've germinated them with living them to life. So this is sort of what Ascension is to me, is where we have to do a life review on who we are, how we got to this moment, and to do an overhaul and let go of anything that's not serving our greatest interests, that are painful childhood memories, whatever they may be. Some people need a therapist to do that. I did not. I think if you need a therapist, go see a therapist. It's great. If that's something that's resonating with you, go see someone. For me, I've sort of been guided by God, because I think ultimately God's always there for you in presence, and I think we forget that. And I'm here to remind people that it can just be that simple. And I don't think it has to be that complicated sometimes. So Ascension really for me is that space of living from your heart. And I think what happens, and again, I said this the other day on the call, but the longest journey one will ever take is from the head to the heart. But when you live from the heart, it really does, it opens up your cosmic, I think, vibration. And so then this led into sort of some other, this other sort of space that I wanted to sort of touch on. So I'm talking a lot, and you're not saying anything.
That's okay.
Yeah. Oh no. I'm gonna continue. No. Keep going. Keep going.
I'm just going to continue. So one of the other things that God showed me is that the chakra system is wonderful, and it works really, really well. It's sort of the first phase of energy understanding. So it's sort of, it's a wonderful thing. I love chakra work. So the thing that God showed me is that you have to bring in divine love. Okay. So we have a lot of junk. So in our life, we have sort of sludge is what I would explain it as. Sludge, it's gooey like tar. It mucks up the chakra system. So we have 7 chakra systems to start with. There's many more, but we'll start with the 7. So the crown, we have the third eye, the throat, the heart. Obviously, and the heart has 2 shelves, the upper and the lower heart is what I've been shown, like a chalice. And then there's the solar plexus, the sacral, and then the root, right? So we know the chakras. So God asked me to basically open up my crown like this, and there's a space above your head that's very pure. and to go to source or to God and to bring God's divine love through the crown. And what you can do is, I call it a vacuum meditation, but God showed me to vacuum away any sludge. So just to almost use your hand as like a wand and just suction out your brain, all around your brain, and just clean it out and remove any sludge, and even use your hand to let it go to God. God can take that, no problem. Let God deal with that stuff. It's not yours anymore. So make new space. So then you go to God again after you've cleaned that out, and you open up your bandwidth to God, and you bring in divine love now to just basically wash in, almost like in a dental office, how they wash your teeth. Just wash in your area that you just cleaned with divine love and divine frequency from God. And what's interesting is that the chakra starts to spin. Probably hasn't been doing that for people that haven't done this. And it starts to spin. Mine were not spinning. Okay? Just be really real, they were not. They were not working right. So anyways, and what's really cool is I went through each chakra in this process, and each time going back to God after cleaning them, and then connecting the chakras then. So the light from the crown to the third eye, the light from the third eye to the throat, the light from the throat to the heart. And then this connection's very clean and then stronger. And then the light starts to work together in our light body. And then doing the lower. And then what's really cool is that the light body becomes one. So it's really beautiful because then you're operating. So we could go through a meditation, but I think it's best to just explain the process and for people to do that on their own. So that meditation has worked wonders for me. And once you clean it up, you don't really have to do it as much. Do it a few times, but it's very much a process. Once it's done, it's sort of cleaned up. So it's aligned with God that way. So that was the one tool that I wanted to give today. And then the other thing that I really want to start talking about is the light body. Once it's in flow, is then it starts to make the auric field around us much better. And what's kind of cool is when I sing, people often tell me that they see my aura, which is pretty cool. And I think people expect to see this bright rainbow, but it doesn't really work like that. It's with the third eye you see that. So it's a knowing, it's a vibration. But I can say I've been to many stages of people that have spiritual vibrations, and I see chakras all the time with people. So that being said, I just think that this understanding of the cleaning up of the inside helps you expand that vibration and frequency outside of yourself. And that's really, I think the first part of Ascension that really starts to sort of get some things back in order, with the divine sort of flowing through us as a vessel of God. So yeah. Those were the first points.
I'm here rigorously taking notes. Yes, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I wanted to show also too, just as proof of this, okay, so this happened this year. So one of the things that God said to me when this all happened was that I would need 9 years to do this, which is one full ascension cycle, okay? So I knew this on March the 6th of 2011, God showed me that I would need 9 years. We buried my father literally on March the 12th. It was the day of the pandemic. It's kind of crazy that that's the way that worked out, just saying. So he died on the 6th and we buried him on the 12th. That is when I was doing my last concert. And what's really interesting is many people ask me to do many things past March the 12th, and I said no. And I always say yes. I'm a yes person, okay? But I said no, and I knew intuitively back in November to start saying no for anything beyond March the 12th. And I just want to share this because I think that this proves that when you start living these diamond light moments, I think you're going to start seeing people live proof that we can create heaven on earth. And I want to prove what is really possible when you start creating. There was once a point where I didn't know who Louise Hay was. And I find this sort of fascinating because I'm also a medium. So I communicate with people on the other side very easily, which I think we all can do, by the way. I'm not unique. But that said, I think once you clean the system up, we're much more aware of frequencies and we're much more sensitive and understand how to process them. So basically in February, I was invited out to receive Louise Hay's ashes. My song was used to honor her for her last birthday on Earth, which was when she turned 90. My song, My Heart, in particular. And I remember when I wrote this song, I remember God showing me that it was called, and I quote, a conscious quantum heart song. So it's a quantum heart love song. And I remember knowing this because I remember as a child when I was about 16, I was shown that I would write a quantum heart love song. This is the song that I knew that was the Quantum Heart love song, which was used for her last birthday. The thing that's really wild about this, just to show that we can manifest, and this is the point. So I went out to San Diego, which is 2 years after her birthday. She died in transition to my music, which is crazy to me. And the thing that's even more fascinating about this is, so I brought her ashes with me just to prove that this is, she's in here. I'm going to do something very special with these. I know what it is. I haven't publicly sort of shared this yet, but I'm going to do something amazing with her ashes. And the thing that I was given, which I didn't expect, was this pink heart quartz crystal that was on her desk. And I wanted to share this with you because I think that when you give your heart to the world, truly, because I think that that's our job. I really believe that that's all of our jobs. Whatever you do to serve the world, to help other people, our job is to help the world that way. I think all of us need to sort of come clean with this, more now than ever before. And whatever it is, whatever way you serve the world is your deal. But that's that diamond light moment from when you're a kid. Because you know your purpose when you're a kid. I believe that firmly. And I know that I got this heart back to me from giving my heart to really the world. And I say this with humility, but to be given the heart of a woman that basically was, I think, a thought leader of our time for affirmations and proving that words have power. This is the thing. And Maya Angelou, she was one of my first spiritual teachers, and she said to me in her work, which I knew was a message from God, was that words have power, and that one day you'll be able to measure how much power each word has. And when you start singing, or when you start speaking with words that are powerful with intention, you actually start creating. And I started doing that for God back in 2011. And I know that I was given, and I'm given so much, that more than I could have ever imagined with the relationships that I've developed with my words. And I know you mentioned this because I know you see this sort of in my life, the way that I practice sort of, I think, being a vessel of God and making sure that people know that they're worthy of my time. And I think that we have the power to manifest something more beautiful than you can imagine on the earth. And I think once we start talking about the fact that we can do this so much better together, like I'm powerful, obviously, but together we are so much more powerful. And divisions have been sort of driven into our programming, and we have to sort of just let that all go. Like, I really think that we're at that precipice in our evolution to just say enough. Like, between race, I mean, I'm married to someone that's Black. I say this because I really want to honor both of you too in the spiritual movement of what you're doing, because I don't see enough of people talking about the fact that we're one humanity in this genre, if you call it spirituality. Yeah. And I think we need to start sort of integrating those conversations much better. So I think that we're at this sort of evolution that we need to start talking about the fact that we're very powerful, and together we are unstoppable. And when we finally can just let go of our inhibitions, because I think a lot of people are scared to talk about race or scared to talk about any of these things. And we have to start being mature adults that are healed children, where we can start talking about these things that are really, really important right now. Yeah. And I'm really excited to see sort of the next space for humanity to sort of have some of these conversations. And I think we're at that beautiful sweet spot in our evolution now. And I think it's really about time that we get busy doing it. And it's through being our highest self and manifest and trusting the process.
Yes.
So that's all I wanted to say about that.
Well, I'd love to share with you some of the love that you're receiving in the comments too. Vina has sent many, many emojis, and especially about the diamond light seeds.
Yes.
Ruth Anna says, "Hey, Paul," with a
Hi,
flower.
Ruth Anna.
Skylar says yes, and Vina also agrees. Being the vessel of God.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'm excited about. Ultimately, I think that once we can start having Maya Angelou also talked about courage. I realize so clearly I want to talk about my weaknesses, because I think that weakness is such an important part to share with humility. My two weaknesses, and I think they're really, really common. I see them all the time. My biggest weakness was that I was a perfectionist, without question. And I think we live in a world that expects us to be perfect. And it's the craziest thing to wrap your head around, because I couldn't figure out why or how I needed to be so perfect, but I didn't ever want to let anyone down. And that was just such a huge breakthrough for me. And really, I was just scared. Perfectionism is just scared that you're going to make a mistake, but you're never going to get anywhere without trying. And if you make a mistake, it's no big deal. When we were kids, we used to it never even fazed us. But why, as we get older, do we start to stop understanding that you just get back up? It's no big deal. It's really not a big deal. But it holds you back, I think, because you really just don't want to do anything not perfect. And you can't get to perfect without trying. So that was the first thing I just wanted to share. The other thing that I wanted to also talk about is I think the biggest thing that I also realized is I was so incapable of having courage. And I think courage, I did not understand where courage came from. I didn't know how to have courage. And I think this is a big mistake that a lot of people make, and they get stuck in not having courage. And Maya used to say that the greatest sort of virtue is courage, because if you don't have enough courage, you can't really be love. Or if you don't have enough courage, you can't exercise peace. Courage is the most important sort of nutrition for all of the virtues. And I think it's really important to talk about how you get courage. And courage doesn't come from you, it comes from God. It's really the simple. When it's no longer yours alone, and you don't have to do this alone. You're actually not big enough to do this alone. You never were big enough to do this alone. No one. Nobody can do this alone. You have to go to God. And where you feel weak, you bring in courage. And that's divinity. And divinity is that eternal presence that is your soul. And you are more powerful than thousands of suns with God. But without that connection, you are not going to be enough to sustain life force energy in this world. So I think we need to be really clear about where courage comes from. And it's not from self per se. So you got to tap in, put your plug into God and connect. So I just wanted to share, because I didn't know where to find courage, and then I did.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Similarly with power.
Yeah.
Just being able to do a lot of things in the world, or, even to operate from day to day. At one point in time, I found myself exhausted.
Yeah.
And I was like, why? Because I'm doing it.
Right.
If I could allow a space for more than just me to do it, then I would have infinite amount of energy.
Yeah, exactly. Beautifully said. Perfect example. And you've been doing this, just for anybody that's not aware, you've been doing this for 2 days straight, and probably however many days preparing. Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah. No wonder you're tired. Yeah.
And when I understand, and Dell brings this to presences this quite a bit, which really helps me. It's like, well, why are you doing it?
Mm.
And that is really what gives me that energy, because I realize that the reason why I'm doing this is because I felt called.
Yeah.
And I didn't create this. It already existed, and it called to be born through me.
Yeah, beautifully said.
Us.
Yeah.
Us.
Yeah. Oh, I like I love that. That's beautifully said. It's beautifully said. So that being said, so on this beautiful sort of space, sort of time continuum that we're in, I think the thing that you know, moving forward out of this pandemic too, I really feel that you're going to see some things on, you know, I've been showing some visions just about the way that we're going to all have to really harness our energies together. And I think this is the thing that you're starting to see sort of truth rise. And I think, you know, going back to what God sort of asked to share today is just, you know, the truth makes no sort of excuse. And I think the thing that we're just in right now is we're in this huge awakening of truth. And I think that you're going to start to see stories around the world that are going to be shocking to some people. And I think that we've all been prepared as spiritual community to sort of be big enough to help those to hold a hand of another. And I think that's really the big thing about this pandemic. I've learned some things about this whole thing that's very disturbing, to be very frank about it. And I'm concerned about it for a certain part of the population. But at the same time, I know that we are at this huge leaping forward where we get to basically have some truth. And I think once we start operating with truth in our governments, in our human sort of relationships with one another, I think you're going to start to see the power of human beings that you've never seen before. And I think that's sort of where we're at. And it's sort of the game, really, quite frankly, the game has changed. Is sort of how I feel about this particular time in our evolution. So I'm excited about sort of what comes from this. So I'm happy that you've done this. If to just say that I think you've held a space open for a community that exists in a structure that is very real from soul to soul. And I'm excited about sort of, I think just the expansion that you've held open during this time, because not a lot of people have been doing this sort of thing. So thank you for doing that too. Yeah.
I received that.
Yeah. It's big. Yeah.
And the name of the brand is Our Daily Magic.
Okay.
So we're talking about, you know, like the reverence for the divine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, well, in my life, I can say, you know, that there were times where I experienced miracles every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And that name is an ode to the fact that, you know, there's a miracle that can be had every single day.
Absolutely. I'm into that. I completely agree.
So what we're doing here is we're holding space. I'm holding space for the miracles that would like to be here.
Absolutely.
Including you.
The thing that happened when my dad first died too, when I started singing, and Corey actually witnessed this miracle, and I've seen different miracles in my life, but one of the most just the profound, coolest thing that I've ever seen happen, a plant that we had, which had never been watered, I think in about a week, started dripping water one morning when I started playing, the first day that I started playing after my dad died. And it formed, you know, when wood gets wet, it formed two eyes, two pupils with actual eyes, with teardrops on the wood. And I didn't even know what the noise was, but I heard this drip, 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 drip. And I looked over to my left, and this plant was like gushing with water in our living room, like right where I'm sitting right here, where I wrote all my music, okay? So this is the thing, like, if you have never sort of experienced a miracle, like, I don't know what to tell you. But I've seen, that was the first one after my dad died, and I've had way too many to count. And I think that, you know, we're living in times where you're going to see miracles around people that actually hold the opportunity for them to exist. So you saying it is miraculous, because everything is a miracle. So this is, I mean, even how we know each other is miraculous. I mean, to be even invited to the UN, like, I couldn't have ever imagined that in my life. Like, that's crazy to me. But that was such a powerful moment. And it wasn't about even anything other than just the alignments that happen. And that's what you start to see, that God works through alignments. And when you give, you receive. And so this is the thing that it's like breathing. You know, the trees are in perfect balance for our breath, and we are in perfect balance for each other to create and co-create miracles with God. So this is the thing that is so beautiful that you even call it that. So I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. How are you feeling, Dal?
Miraculous.
Yeah, perfect word. Well, I think that that feels like it's a good way to end.
Absolutely.
Ending on a miracle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The miracles that we are. Much
Yeah,
appreciated.
absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you for your time, and anyone that's paid or tapped into this or paid some time or shared some time with us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much too for just taking some time, and God bless you.
Did you want to read them just really quick? Dal's going to fill you in on the rest of the love that's here on the chat for you.
Okay, great.
I don't even know where we left off at.
Well, we left off at Vina was saying courage comes from God.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Garrett said, I found my child self. Anyone else? And then Skylar said, yes, isn't the reunion beautiful? Vina said, thank you, thank you, thank you. Garrett said, either we want to change or we just want change. And Skylar said, wow. Vina said, everything is a miracle. So true. Garrett said, this is energetically awesome. This resonates with me. Vina said, I also love the beautiful laugh of yours. Beautiful soul. Skylar said, love it. Thank you, Paul. And then Vina said, God bless you all, beautiful souls.
Absolutely.
Yeah, beautiful. God bless you too.
Yes.
And what I love about this too is that I know that there'll be people that tap into this in the future too. So if you're watching this in the future, there's no real divide. So we're all in this moment with you if this is in the future for you too. Mm-hmm. So God bless you.
Absolutely. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you.